Imagine like holding this bright, beautiful flower in your hands, right?
Okay.
You pull it out of the soil, you're cataloging the exact shape, the color, everything,
Mm-hmm.
only to realize that um, a tiny, totally invisible instruction hidden inside its seed means you might actually be holding a complete imposter.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is. So welcome to today's deep dive. Today we are unpacking a single, fascinating, and honestly incredibly fresh source.
Yeah, super fresh.
Right, it's a blog post that was published literally just yesterday, June 8th, 2026.
By a writer named Ang.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And it has this incredibly unassuming title, Notes on Gardening Part 919, The Hardy Goldenrod.
Or, if you want to use the formal scientific name that Ang uses, Solidago.
Solidago, right.
Maybe.
And it sounds like this quiet, dispatch from a peaceful afternoon in the dirt, doesn't it?
It totally does. I mean, you read part 919 and you just picture someone merely logging the routine maintenance of their backyard.
Just ticking boxes.
Right, just pulling weeds. But what actually unfolds in this text is this amazing narrative arc. It's really a collision between what we can clearly see and the hidden biological programming that actually runs the natural world.
Which is exactly why we're looking at this today. Because whether you are, a seasoned botanist managing a greenhouse or someone who can barely keep a desk succulent alive.
Like me.
Like you, yeah. This single afternoon in Ang's garden completely challenges how we categorize the plants around us.
It really does. It's a complete botanical mystery.
So we're going to explore the illusion of visual fragility, the underground architecture of plant survival, and a biological locking mechanism so specific it throws an entire identity into question.
Sounds like a lot for a simple gardening blog.
Oh, it is. Okay, let's unpack this. We need to start exactly where Eng starts, which is with the physical encounter of the plant itself.
Right, the first impressions. So the entry begins with this exercise in close observation. Ang is giving us a real-time morphological breakdown of the goldenrod.
Mm-hmm. And Eng notes right off the bat that the foliage itself isn't really a personal favorite.
Yeah, which is kind of funny. But despite that subjective opinion, the cataloging is incredibly precise.
Very precise.
Like they know the leaves are lance-shaped.
Which means they're elongated, right?
Yeah.
Like wider in the middle and tapering to a sharp point.
Exactly. And they grow in an alternate pattern.
So they stagger up the stem rather than, sprouting in those mirrored pairs.
Right, right. And they have smooth margins, which basically means the edges of the leaves are clean. There's no serration or teeth or anything like that.
It reads almost like a detective logging the physical description of a suspect.
It really does. And then, the most prominent feature Ang logs is the flower.
Oh, yeah, the flowers.
Ang describes these bright, star-shaped yellow flowers growing in these dense clusters.
And the text explicitly notes that these clusters are guaranteed to attract the attention of any onlooker.
Oh, for sure.
So the visual impression you get is just showy, bright, and almost fragile in its delicate star-like shapes,
But what's fascinating here is that visual impression is immediately subverted by the physical reality.
Because Ang is in the middle of transplanting these specimens.
Yes. And transplanting is, it's an inherently violent process for a plant.
Oh, totally. You're unearthing it, ripping it from its established soil structure.
You're exposing its root system to the open air. And through that sheer physical struggle of handling it, Ang realizes the goldenrod is, quote, quite a hardy plant.
Right. So those delicate star-shaped yellow flowers and those smooth leaves, they're essentially just an evolutionary billboard, right?
Yeah, just to attract pollinators. But the actual physical structure of the plant is built like absolute armor.
It's basically running a perceptual con.
How do you mean?
Well, I was thinking about it like, think of a tough-as-nails bouncer at a club.
Okay, a bouncer.
But this bouncer is wearing a flashy, brightly colored, star-shaped yellow suit.
That is quite the visual.
Right. Like you see the bright yellow stars and you think, oh, this is a fragile thing just swaying in the wind.
But then you try to mess with it.
Exactly. When you grab it by the stem and try to source it into a new pot, you encounter some serious structural integrity. It's tough.
And that brutal physical resilience above ground, it's only possible because of what's happening completely out of sight.
Which is the real survival engine. And that's exactly what Ang encounters next, right?
Right. The text categorizes the goldenrod as a hardy, herbaceous perennial.
And that word, perennial, that's the key here.
It is. It means the plant's fundamental life strategy is to survive for multiple years. It dies back to the ground when winter comes, and then pushes up new growth when spring returns.
So to achieve that kind of multi-year survival, you obviously can't rely on the fragile leaves or those showy flowers.
No, you'd freeze. You have to build an infrastructure where the winter freeze just can't reach you.
Right. Which brings us to arguably the most successful part of Eng's gardening session, which is the underground network.
The propagation?
Yeah. Eng writes about propagating the goldenrod through division. And the entry mentions that Eng initially bought just 2 specimens.
Just 2?
Just 2. But from those 2 original plants, Eng has already harvested, quote, several creeping rhizomes.
And Eng helpfully defines rhizomes right in the text as underground stems.
Which, I mean, is that a big deal? Stems versus roots.
Oh, biologically, that distinction between a root and an underground stem is critical.
Really? Why is that?
Well, a standard root is primarily designed to just anchor the plant and absorb water and nutrients, right?
Okay, makes sense.
But a rhizome, because it is technically a stem, possesses nodes.
Oh, gotcha.
And these nodes contain meristematic tissue, which is essentially plant stem cells. They hold the genetic instructions and the stored starch energy required to push entirely new vertical shoots up through the soil.
All while continuing to tunnel horizontally below the surface.
Exactly. It's a phenomenal mechanism.
It's like, think of these creeping rhizomes not as roots, but as a secret underground subway system.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, so you go to the nursery, you buy 2 subway stations, right? The original specimens. And you drop them into your garden.
Right.
But what you've actually purchased is this aggressive, expanding, hidden transit network. And because of those nodes you mentioned, Eng can just take a spade, chop right through that subway line, and pop up a brand new station, a new pot, wherever they want.
That's exactly how it works.
Yeah.
And it shows how efficiently this method works for the gardener. By simply dividing what's already thriving under the soil, Eng is multiplying the garden's yields so easily.
Biologically speaking, Eng is creating a clone army.
Basically, yeah. By severing the rhizome, Eng isn't starting a new life cycle. Eng is just relocating a piece of the existing mature infrastructure.
Because the plant has already done the hard work.
Right. It's synthesized the energy, stored it in that dense underground stem. So when Eng divides it and pots it, that severed rhizome has all the resources it needs to immediately establish itself.
That connects to that broader idea of how perennials sustain themselves year after year, right? Through these really resilient underground structures.
Exactly. It is incredibly efficient, which completely explains why Eng was able to multiply those 2 initial specimens into numerous pots with barely any effort.
It feels almost like a cheat code for gardening. You just find the subterranean transit line, break off a section, and boom, fully functioning, hardy plant.
It paints a picture of a botanical powerhouse that just aggressively claims territory.
But wait, if the plant is so tough, and if it spreads this effortlessly through its underground subway system, what happens when we look at how it reproduces from scratch? With seeds.
Yeah, this is the turning point in the post. We transition from the massive success of the vegetative division to the profound difficulty of sexual reproduction.
Because Eng writes that while dividing the rhizomes is simple, trying to grow the goldenrod from seed introduces a pretty severe complication.
A very severe one. The text explicitly notes that the seeds require a period of cold and moist stratification to break dormancy.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because when we talk about seeds, we usually picture planting them in some nice warm potting soil, giving them some sunshine, and just watching them sprout.
That's the standard expectation, yeah.
But these goldenrod seeds absolutely refuse to play by those rules. It's like, think of the seed's dormancy like an incredibly stubborn alarm clock.
A stubborn alarm clock.
Yeah, the seed just hits the snooze button and absolutely refuses to wake up and grow unless it experiences highly specific, really uncomfortable conditions.
Uncomfortable is a good way to put it.
It has to be cold and moist for a set period. It doesn't care how much warm sunlight you give it.
And analyzing what this specific requirement means, the biology behind it is fascinating because the seed doesn't just passively sleep.
Right.
Dormancy is an active, chemically enforced state. The seed is actually packed with germination-inhibiting hormones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in order to break that dormancy, the seed demands 2 simultaneous environmental extremes: sustained cold and continuous moisture.
So going back to like an alarm clock or maybe a combination lock, tumbler 1 is the temperature drop, right?
Right. The seed must be subjected to freezing or near freezing temperatures for a prolonged period to actively break down those internal chemical inhibitors.
And then tumbler 2 is the moisture. Because the seed coat is tough. It acts like a physical vault.
Exactly. The constant moisture slowly penetrates and softens that outer hull.
So if you don't input both codes, the sustained cold and the penetrating moisture, the vault stays shut. The seed just refuses to germinate.
And it's a stark contrast, isn't it? The grown plant is hardy and so easily divided, but the seeds are highly finicky and conditionally locked.
It totally disrupts Aang's straightforward gardening session.
It does. But, if we look at why a plant would evolve such a demanding mechanism, it makes perfect sense for a hardy perennial facing a harsh climate.
Because of winter.
Exactly. If a goldenrod drops its seeds in late autumn, and those seeds sprouted immediately during, say, a brief, unseasonable warm spell in November.
Oh, the tender new seedlings would be completely wiped out by the first true winter freeze.
Precisely. The stratification requirement is an evolutionary safeguard. The seed uses the cold and moisture of the winter itself as the required signal.
It guarantees the seed only germinates after the deadly winter has entirely passed.
Yes.
I mean, that is a brilliant survival tactic in the wild. But as Aang is discovering, it is incredibly tedious for a gardener holding a packet of seeds in June.
It's a huge logistical headache.
It's a staggering contrast. The adult organism is this aggressive subway builder you can chop into pieces, but its offspring is this hyper-paranoid, locked-down vault.
And that extreme contrast, that specific finicky seed requirement, it causes a sudden shift in the source material's tone.
Right, which leads to our final narrative beat, the botanical whodunit.
Because it's not just a logistical headache for Aang, it becomes a psychological catalyst.
We hit this sudden pivot in the text. Because of this strict cold and moist stratification requirement to break seed dormancy, Aang suddenly second-guesses everything.
Everything. Aang literally writes that this detail makes them wonder if they have even identified the right species.
Which is wild. It's a profound moment of doubt.
Aang had complete certainty earlier in the afternoon. Now all of that certainty has evaporated because of a single invisible trait about the seeds.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, push back.
If the plant physically matched all those visual cues, right? The yellow star-shaped clusters, the lance-shaped leaves, how could one invisible trait about its seeds throw the whole identity into question?
Well, this raises an important question about the nature of observation.
How so?
Well, you are relying on morphology, right? The physical shape, the structural traits, the visual cues, those are the external markers.
Sure.
But what Aang is wrestling with is that biological behavior, like a strict seed stratification requirement, is a fundamental, hard-coded instruction set.
So visual identification can sometimes conflict with biological behavior.
Exactly. In botany, there is a phenomenon known as phenotypic plasticity, where a plant changes its physical appearance based on its environment.
Oh, I see.
There are also cryptic species, organisms that look absolutely identical to the naked eye but are genetically distinct and behave completely differently.
Oh, wow. So it's like buying a heavy-duty diesel truck, right?
Okay.
It looks like a diesel truck.
Okay.
It has the heavy suspension, the massive towing capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But then you open the manual and it says the engine specifically requires high-octane aviation fuel to start.
That's a great way to put it.
Suddenly you realize that despite the chassis, whatever's under the hood is fundamentally different than what you assumed.
Exactly. Aang is realizing that the visual cues, the smooth margins, the yellow stars, they might belong to a subspecies or a different hybrid or an entirely separate taxonomic group that just happens to wear the same outfit as a Solidago.
Just masquerading as Goldenrod.
Right. The realization that the biological programming of the seed demands such specific conditions makes the superficial visual cues seem instantly inadequate.
Even though the physical proof is literally in Aang's hands, the rhizomes are already potted.
Yes, but the internal behavioral data completely contradicts the external packaging, and it leaves the gardener in total suspense.
It is wild that an invisible data point inside a dormant seed can possess enough gravity to completely destabilize the identity of a mature, flowering plant.
It really is. It turns this simple journal entry about dividing plants into an unresolved mystery.
Because Aang ends the entry not with a definitive conclusion, but basically a cliffhanger.
Right. Aang writes, "Nevertheless, let's see how this plant fares in the coming weeks."
They're just surrendering to observation.
The backyard garden is no longer just a place to multiply plants. It's a laboratory now.
Aang has to wait for the plant to grow, or wait to see if the seeds ever actually break dormancy to confirm what's actually living in those pods.
It's a waiting game.
So, to bring it all together for you listening today, what started as, a simple journal entry about dividing a hardy plant with yellow star-shaped flowers turned into this Crazy botanical cliffhanger.
A true deep dive.
Yeah. We started with a visual illusion. The delicate, flashy flower that turned out to be physically tough. We moved beneath the soil to uncover that aggressive underground subway system of creeping rhizomes.
The clone army.
The clone army, exactly. And finally, we collided with the impenetrable vault of the plant's seed, that chemical combination lock requiring cold and moisture.
Which was so contradictory to the easy division that it shattered the gardener's certainty entirely, and then we leave Aang waiting to see what happens in the coming weeks to solve the mystery of the goldenrod's true identity.
It's quite a journey for a Tuesday afternoon.
It really is. And, I want to leave the listener with a final thought to mull over.
Oh, please do.
Think about Aang's unresolved mystery. If learning just one hidden fact, like a seed's need for cold and moisture, was enough to make a gardener completely doubt the identity of a plant they were holding in their own bare hands, what assumptions in your own life or work are standing on equally shaky ground, just waiting to be uprooted by a single contradictory piece of evidence?
Wow, that is a heavy question.
Hmm.
It really shows that seeing something clearly is not the same thing as understanding how it actually works.
Not at all.
The moment you dig past the visual billboard and engage with the underlying mechanics, the neat categories we rely on really tend to fall apart. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.